by the ring finger coming down. And then the most interesting one, this is your heart line. Love line, marriage line.
You're looking at the little line, like when you bend your finger, or you're looking at the big one that comes down?
This is your heart line. This is your heart. The bigger one is your heart line. The smaller ones are all the liaisons that you have. And the deepest one of them is your marriage line.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And if you take a magnifying lens, you could even see the children, the fine lines coming out of the marriage line.
Oh, wow. Did you know all that?
Mm-mm.
So that's
I'm still looking for
I know it is. So basically what she's talking about is the line up here.
right.
Is
This
your heart
is
line?
the love line.
The heart line.
And then I was joking around about my intelligence line, but I really
You
think
do
you're
have
talking
it.
about this one. Oh, here, wait, she's going to zoom in on it. Okay. So this line here is the heart line. This line here is the intelligence line.
Right.
And then this line here was your lifeline that goes all the way down. Can you get that?
You're a good
Okay.
listener.
I know, I'm trying.
I got that.
And then when you go like that, the line here is where you're talking about is
the
your
marriage
love
line.
and marriage line. Okay. And we would need a magnifying glass. We're not that technologically advanced here at Access 23 TV.
See, now on this hand, I have a line. I have 4.
You do have an extra line in your hands.
I do.
Where did it go?
Does it split?
In between the heart and the intelligence.
It's almost
Okay.
like her intelligence
Okay.
line splits.
That's a double headline. What that means, should I talk about it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What that means is you probably have 2 minds. You may
I
have an
always do
intellectual
that.
side. You have an
Keep telling her
intellectual
she's
side
crazy. Nobody listens to
and
me.
a non-intellectual or an artistic side.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense.
You have 2 sides. You have a double mind, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your imaginative side. Sometimes it goes sloping all the way down like mine does. And when I was a child, I said to myself, I was in no way artistic. I was completely a bookworm. And, you know, it was all about studying and doing well in school and everything. I never dreamt that I would become an artist. And I would look at the line and joke with my dad and say, I think that's not going to come true. And he said, you don't know yet.
Right, right.
You're only 12 or 13. You have your whole life ahead of you.
Right.
You don't know that yet. And he always kept it open. And then you also have your fingers
Okay.
and the length of the fingers in proportion to one another.
Okay.
Okay.
That tells you a lot, the shape of the hand. There's 7 shapes. You know, you have different names, all 7 different ones. And then you have your little lines called phalanges. And that also tells you a lot.
See, now that I did not, I mean, I'm not an expert in palmistry by no means, but I know they read the lines. But now that is honestly the first time that I've ever heard that the length of your fingers also have significance and that the lines on your fingers, that's very interesting. So what does that, like, is that personality?
Yes,
or okay.
exactly.
See, I am psychic.
Yes, you are. It tells you about your mindset
Okay.
and your personality type and also your interests.
Okay.
It tells you, like Kiro that I mentioned, the palmist, he could tell a murderer by his hand.
Really?
He traveled often, as I mentioned, and in the train ride, because they traveled a lot in the train in those days, he would ask his fellow travelers to open their palms and shut them, and then proceed with the conversation accordingly.
I'm just sitting here thinking there's some people I would like to check out. And wouldn't that be nice at the airport when you're getting on a plane? So like, can I just see your hands? We're going to have her come on and do a whole show about that. We'll call it Security 101 Palmistry. But isn't that really serious?
That is
Did you ever
interesting.
hear
No,
that?
I haven't heard that
I knew about
before.
love life and
the
how
life,
long you're going to
yeah.
live and the kid thing. I've heard that before. How many times you're going to be married, that whole thing. Hopefully that line's missing for me because once was enough. Hopefully I only
I
have one
can't
line there.
tell.
When you smush your finger, like right here. But like you said, those lines, you need
They're
a
very
glass
fine,
to look.
very
Yeah,
fine.
they're very fine lines. But that is amazing.
And then you
That he
also
would
have
do
your
that.
nails. Of course, we all have
I was
painted
just going to
nails.
say, yeah, we all
Yeah.
have them.
So it's a little hard, but for men, you could see the shape of the nails. You have like a roundish shape. You have like a pointed conic shape. and you have like the square shape,
Okay.
and then you have oblong. So you have different, and then the fingers being very short mean one thing, and very long means one
So
thing.
what does short mean?
Short means practical. It's very practical. And long and lean means artistic.
That's very interesting.
And I always struggled as a child because I thought of myself as very practical, very intellectual. And everybody who looked at me would say, "Do you play the piano?"
Right.
I'd be like, "No, I do not."
Oh,
But now, the first thing I have to say when people ask me is, "I'm an artist," because that's
Right.
what I do now.
right.
So it's like changed, complete 360 degrees.
That is amazing. That is really, thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
My
Art.
pleasure.
How did you get involved with that? Because, on Create Your Reality, when I originally decided to do the show, I didn't want to make it just like a psychic call-in show because, you started years ago like I did. And back then, it wasn't as well known as it is now, and definitely not as accepted as it is now. And it wasn't all over the TV and the radio. So I didn't want to just do a psychic show. Like, I wanted to do a show to help people, inspire people, give people knowledge about things that they wouldn't come across in their everyday lives, to kind of open their minds
Like
and
palm
go,
reading.
yeah, and exactly like palm reading. And it's funny because we kind of put the information out there, and then it's the audience job to kind of figure out what clicks for them and what doesn't. So, following through with the art and something that you're obviously now very passionate about, how did you make that transition, and how did that all come about?
Well, I think I mentioned I was ill, and I had a lot of problems at one time, which is not so cool. And doctors had a very hard time after a lot of tests in diagnosing even one of the problems. So here I was. I could barely walk. I couldn't eat much. And there was not much I could do. And being a very active person, I'm someone who works out every single day. And I was just almost tied. I felt very restricted and imprisoned, not being able to physically move. I was dizzy all the time, so I really couldn't hold a book and read. There was not much I could do. And I guess the psychics in me said, this is just a phase. I knew that I would get out of it. But rather than go crazy, I said, I have to do something to pass the time and keep myself occupied. I can't keep thinking about things I have no control over and getting crazy and nutty. The back of my mind as a child, I always wanted to paint. I never really spent time in developing it because I was into reading and getting educated. And I really had no time for art. And I said, maybe this is the time I could start that, because I never had time to do it before. This is a good time. And I was living in Europe at the time. I was in France, and I could walk down to the art school because I couldn't drive. I could walk down. And I walked down to school and started art classes, and took trips, field trips, and visited the south of France where all the masters were. And I was walking down where Van Gogh walked at one time, and I just felt like I've done this before, I've seen this before, I have to create it now. So I started with paints, and here we are today. I do paint, and I do have exhibitions. I have my work in galleries, and pretty
Wow.
actively involved with that.
Wow.
That's a wonderful story because, and again, I'm not glad that you got sick, but so many people get sick, and again, there's that hopelessness, and people give up so easy, and how many people would have just said, this is it, my life has changed and I have to accept it. And instead you said, okay, for the time being, I can't do what I normally did before. So what am I going to do to fill that time, but yet keep myself inspired and moving forward? And that's huge. A lot of people don't even see that as an option.
A lot of people don't do that in just normal everyday life.
Right.
They have a job, they have their family and they just
Right.
plug along. Nobody makes a major life change unless you're stuck in a situation like that.
And I'm always
do a
talking
positive
about
way.
right. I'm always talking about like it's every person's individual choice, regardless of what's going on in your life, to either be reactive to the things that are going on around you and say, "Poor me," you know, if I had that person's life, I'd be happy, but I don't. Or to take a proactive role and say, "All right, this is what's going on, but I can get through this, and you know, what can I do to make it better for myself?" So, how often do you do shows and stuff?
Right now, when I just came back from Europe, I was more active with it because I didn't really come back to my life that I had before. But now I have, and so it's still a big part of my life. I do a show in New York once in a while, a year, and then one in New Hope. So a couple times a year, but then we have galleries down in Stroudsburg where I live, and I do monthly galleries there.
Wow. Wow. And where do you do your readings and stuff?
We have fairs
Okay.
and sometimes tarot parties.
Okay.
That's really becoming popular.
Okay.
In fact, I have one for Halloween. So that's always fun.
Right.
Right.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, you can go onto the website, spiritquesthealingcenter.com, and just email me, and I'll get them in touch with you if they, not that we're taking any excuses for why someone can't be at the Health and Healing Expo on Sunday, November 8th at 11 a.m.
Right.
But in case you have a really, really good excuse that we might let slip by and you want to get in touch with her, you could just email me and I'll pass it along
Great.
to you. Questions?
A ton of them, but I'd have to pay for reading.
Yes, because there are no freebies on Create Your Reality. I am the bouncer of the psychics. Do you have any general questions?
I'm thinking, I mean, my head's still spinning with that
I
whole
just really
thing.
think
I'm trying to
that's-
figure
yeah,
out how
it-
to ask questions that aren't related to me personally.
Right. It is very interesting though, with like the length of the fingers and all of that too.
If you wanted to do more research on it, is there a particular book that you would think you could go find at the library to do
There
more reading
are some
on?
books. There are some books. Unfortunately, there aren't too many. We have a lot on the tarot cards. We have a lot of resources and a lot of good ones. But the palmistry, I don't know why. I can still picture my dad's library. These books are very old,
Uh-huh.
and he had the best collection. And
Maybe we have to encourage her to write a book of her own.
Ah,
I've never come across a collection. I'm always on the lookout. I'm always looking on the net to purchase them. I've
Right.
never found. I do have a couple books, but they just don't hit the spot. And you'll probably still be having those questions.
Right. So what are you going to be doing at the expo? I mean, we know you're going to be doing readings, but what are you going to do, like a combination of things? Or
Yeah.
what are you going to be doing at the expo?
I'm going to be doing a combination of the tarot cards and the runes. And if the energy is there, I might look at their hand. It
Okay.
depends. Every card is different.
Right.
You know, sometimes they have something that's answered and they want to leave. You know, they're
Okay.
happy, they're satisfied. They have more questions.
Right.
It depends.
that would be me.
That'll be Misty. And just to let people know, at the event, the Health and Healing Expo, part of the proceeds we had mentioned before are being donated to the Gate. Do I have their information with me? Which is an amazing organization. They work with disabled children and some adults too. And their information is www.gaitpa.com. And we're actually going to be donating that money in memory of Jean Work, who is was connected to Tina, who's co-sponsoring with us. So when you come to the expo, there is, I think I could say the admission, can I? I better not. There's a very minimal admission to get in, and all of that is going to this charity. And then we'll have 25 vendor tables, information tables. We have 18 psychics, palm readers, mediums. There'll be aura photography there. There'll be 18 healers of all different modalities, Reiki and all different things.
Reflexology.
Reflexology, thank you. Yes, reflexology. And then we will also have 3 workshop rooms that will be going on all day long. Some of the workshops are free. Some of them, again, are a minimal fee. But with the readers, they'll be doing like 15, 20-minute readings each. So it's nice. There is a separate fee for that, but it's nice because you can go to a couple of different people during the day if you want. The same thing with healers. So the expo is designed to give you a taste of everything.
Figure out what works for you.
Exactly. And every year, I honestly, because I am very picky with the expo, as you know, because you've helped me with them before, but I go out of my way to find like the best people in
Actually,
the area.
they usually find you.
Yeah. Because I always am fascinated by the amazing people that we have right in our area that nobody knows about.
Sure.
You know, sometimes we don't even know about each other, and these
Sure.
events really bring all of those people together. And it's great because it helps the charity that we pick.
Yeah.
It helps the people that are doing the work to get their name out there, and it helps the people that come. And I can't tell you, you know, the first one I ever did was in 2000, and we were talking before the show. I still have people that come to me from that first expo 10 years ago. That fascinates me,
That is fascinating.
you know?
It is.
And a lot of them have gone on to open their own healing centers or start their own private practices. And they'll say to me, you know, my first introduction to this whole holistic, new age, whatever you feel comfortable calling it, was through that expo, which is fascinating because that was really my first exposure was at a psychic fair. So it's kind of like you feel like you got to
Pass it
Keep
on.
going.
pass it on, yeah. So it's kind of interesting. The other thing that I wanted to ask you too, I know you said that like you were over in Europe and stuff. What do you find different cultures are more or less accepting of the whole psychic thing?
I believe, well, in France, they're not very religious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes them more open
Mm-hmm.
because they're not closed. It's not about Christianity or Catholicism or demonizing or witch sizing, whatever. They're just very open. And it doesn't mean they're all believers in esoteric metaphysical subjects, but they're not closed. And I think they're more accepting, being that they're open.
Right.
And a lot of Europe is that way because they separate the church from everything else. Even the religious ones. Church is church. Public life is public life. Private life is private life. What they hold sacred in Europe is their family.
Okay.
And that's it. That's off limits. Family is very private.
That's very interesting.
That is.